thing on the right,
Yeah, I don't see it.
on my left.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, well. "501, don't get nervous."
Well, we've got everyone joining us right now, and we'll let y'all come into this Zoom, and we'll get started here in just about 60 seconds from now with Rollin and Paige, and it's going to be a fun half hour or so with these two.
A whole half hour? Oh, you poor folks.
Yep.
Never really seems like enough once you get into it.
I hope folks out there brought their pillows.
For sitting.
Bottle
For
of
sitting
ROCO,
on.
right? I mean, come on, you know.
Mm-hmm.
One bottle of ROCO, one bottle of Knudsen. There you go.
That's
I'm
a
just
nice
sitting-
lineup.
I'm just sitting here in the middle of a vineyard.
I'm way at the top of our vineyard.
I can't believe we have that many leaves this time of year.
I know. It's astonishing the kind of bud break you've already had.
Yeah,
Only in Oregon.
yeah.
Well, hello, everyone. Thank you for joining the Knudsen Vineyards 50th Anniversary Interview Series, exploring the past, present, and the future of grape growing and winemaking in the Dundee Hills of Oregon. We kicked this six-part series with Oregon wine pioneer Dick Erath off last month, and we're thrilled you've joined us again here today. Many of you rejoining us for episode 2, and I know some of you for the first time. So we're going to get started in just a moment, but I want to first go over some brief housekeeping items. We're recording this interview, which will be available as an episode on my podcast, Vintage. We'll have that available in the next couple of weeks. Also on Knudsen Vineyards website, knudsenvineyards.com. And our conversation today, about 30 minutes in length, but, you know, give or take 5 or 10 minutes. The Q&A feature will be open during that time, and we encourage you to use it. So we'll be watching the chats and the Q&As, and if or when you have questions, by all means, jump in and ask your question. We'll have about 10 minutes of questions and kind of a wrap up at the end. And if you'd like to join us in the chat, please do. Notice that you can select the audience for your comments before sending them. So if you don't want everybody to see it, be sure to select the appropriate person. You have the option of commenting to the entire audience or just the panelists. So panelists here will be keeping track of the questions submitted to the Q&A tab only, and won't be able to respond to direct messages during the session. We're obviously a little busy conversing with each other. So share your comments with everyone, and this will be a lot of fun. Now, I encourage you, if you haven't already, to pour yourselves a glass of wine, whether it's Knudsen Vineyards or some ROCO.
We have.
I know we have, right? I've got the bubbles flowing already. So I want to encourage you to pour that glass and enjoy yourself. And as I mentioned, number 2 in our series here with Knudsen Vineyards 50th anniversary in the Willamette Valley. It's a series that will reflect on the past and really get insights on the future of the industry as well. Joining us, Paige Knudsen, managing partner at Knudsen Vineyards, and Rollin Soles, founder and winemaker at ROCO Winery. As we know, Rollin, known very well in the industry, one of the most successful and well-known winemakers in Oregon, and really across the country for that matter, and around the world. You know, Rollin's wines have been named top 100 wines in the world by Wine Spectator more than a dozen times now. Unique distinction among Oregon winemakers. Rollin has also been named one of the top 20 most admired winemakers in North America by Vineyard and Winery Management magazine. I know his wines have been served at the White House. He's made wine all over the world. It's an amazing story he's going to share with us. I know I'm embarrassing him right now, but Australia, France, Switzerland, Napa Valley, and of course, right here in Oregon. Rollin moved to the Willamette Valley in the 1980s, and in '87, along with Brian Crozer of Australia co-founded Argyle Winery, now one of the largest and most successful wineries in Oregon. Argyle, of course, well known for the production of world-class sparkling wines and also Pinot Noir and Chardonnay. Knudsen Vineyards was Argyle's founding vineyard. I bet you may not have known that, and its name still appears on Argyle's top-tier wines. So Paige and her three brothers are now the second generation to farm Knudsen Vineyards, started by their father, Cal Knudsen. And they continue this long partnership with Rollin. Paige and Rollin, thank you both so much for being here with us for Knudsen Vineyards 50th anniversary. And Paige, I'll hand off to you.
Thank you so much, Brian. It's really a pleasure to be here with you and Rollin today. And I'll let Rollin, his head may be too big from all those accolades. He may have to dust off the cobwebs. Just have him say hi too.
I'm going to hide behind my little vineyard behind my head. All right, you guys want to get started?
Yeah.
Let's do it. Yeah, I want to ask you first, Rollin. You know, I got to be honest. I'll tell you the truth. The first time I met you, probably 15 years ago, was for the radio show that I used to do.
Right.
And I mean, at the time, even then with Argyle, I remember I met you there. I was kind of nervous because, you know, you were this legendary guy, right? And I was nervous to interview you. And I was so thrilled that you were so warm and welcoming and down to earth, and getting to know you. And it's been great to get to know you and Corby over the years. And what a great story. I get kind of emotional because, I mean, getting to know you, it's such a great story. So I want to ask you, you know, all of these places around the world that you had worked or visited. You know, you grew up down in Texas and you'd been all around the country and around the world as a kid. What was it about the Willamette Valley that made you choose the Willamette Valley? Because you could have gone literally anywhere.
Yeah, I don't know. I think about that every once in a while. But my gateway, if you will, into the wine industry was through Switzerland. So I'd worked a summer in a Pinot Noir vineyard in Switzerland. And, you know, they don't grow Cabernet and Merlot there. And it's pretty green. And in the distance, there's these beautiful snow-covered mountains that, you know, even in the summertime, they have snow on them. And maybe it was, you know, that experience and then visiting the Willamette Valley in the springtime in 1979. It would, you know, the valley here is so green and lush this time of year, and the mountains have snow. Even the Coast Range has, you know, a dusting of snow on them, even right now. I think that was probably a lot of it that attracted me. But the second most endearing part of it is the, you know, the first waivers that came through here, or that established here in the Willamette Valley, including Dick Erath, were so friendly and so open and so accommodating. We went around to pretty much every winery. You know, wasn't very many of them. You count them on both hands, and it was great tasting those Pinot Noirs and the Chardonnays and the Muir Turgau's and the Rieslings, and you could tell there was an energy here that was not the same anywhere else I'd been. So I think it was the beauty and then the people that got me here in the Willamette.
Well, Rollin, our connection started in 1987 when Knudsen Vineyards became the founding grape source for what was then the Dundee Wine Company, now Argyle Winery. How did you and my dad, Cal Knudsen, first meet?
I'd put it down to Alan Holstein. I think you'll interview him at some point.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And he was already managing Knudsen Vineyards. And I'd been in communication a lot with Alan before I arrived here in the Willamette Valley. And so, and then with bringing in, if you think about it, Argyle was the first foreign investment. So we brought in Brian Crozer with his partner, Ian McNee, and then a New York importer, Robert Chatterton. And it was pretty enticing to have that kind of interest in the Willamette Valley. And then, you know, Cal was a smart guy. He had a lot of acreage in the ground, and paint a picture. Even in the late 80s, you almost couldn't sell Pinot Noir. People were actually pulling out Pinot Noir and planting Mueller-Thurgau and Chardonnay. It was pretty grim.
But
And
why was that? If this is such a great region for
because
Pinot Noir,
because we didn't know what we were doing yet, and we only had you had three selections of Pinot Noir to make, and our viticulture was by far and large designed after California, which was just not conducive to the environment up here in the Willamette Valley. We're much cooler and all hillside slopes. Nobody's on the valley floor like you could be in California. And the other part of it was, I mean, my joke used to be that there was one little bitty winery in Carneros in California that made all the Pinot Noir that Americans would drink. So that was the other part of it, is Americans were not drinking Pinot Noir. They were drinking Cabernet, and they were on the cusp of starting to drink Merlot. There was a big Merlot thing that came up, but they weren't drinking Pinot Noir. And so it was tough. In 1992, out of Knudsen Vineyards, I believe we sold Pinot Noir up into Washington State for $600 a ton.
jeepers.
It was brutal. The top of Knudsen Vineyards was planted in Mueller-Thurgau. So it was people today, the winemakers that are in the industry here, did not experience a time when they couldn't sell Pinot Noir. And so we had barely scratched the surface. And the other part of it is, when you're a new, young wine region, it was super difficult to get wholesalers to bring your wines in. So you could, fly over to New Orleans, which loves French wine, and if you made a good Pinot Noir, they might be interested in it. But then you would have to sell through a wine wholesaler, and you couldn't get one to bring you on. So there was that gatekeeper action going on too. So with all that in the background, Cowles, had already planted a rather significant vineyard, not quite half of what it is today. And he knew the value of trying to find someone that could make really good wine, first of all, out of Knudsen Vineyards, and perhaps farm it in a better fashion, because that's the one thing he was exercised about, was if you could convince him that you were going to make better wine off of his grapes by doing X, Y, or Z, he would pony up the money to do it. So as a result, Knudsen Vineyards was the first vineyard in the Willamette Valley for old vines that put in irrigation, because we realized that we need to have a little bit of water in August during veraison, when it's a big nitrogen demand, to cause these grapes to, one, develop flavor, and two, to keep the vines healthy at the same time. And believe it or not, they would actually ripen slightly ahead of unirrigated vines on the same property. So that was just an example. It was a big investment to make, and Cal Knudsen was willing to do it if it was high quality.
No, that's great. He did, when we were kids, you always knew if you went shopping with Dad, he would buy the best stuff. My mother was much more frugal. So we always signed up to go with him. In addition to his affinity for the region of Burgundy, Dad really loved Champagne. And he felt strongly that the climate and soils of the Northern Willamette Valley were really well suited to the production of Pinot Noir, Chardonnay, and Pinot Meunier, which are the primary grapes that you find in that region of Champagne in France, and those most often used in the production of Champagne. Why did you and Brian Crozier decide to affiliate with my father and commit to buy grapes from Knudsen Vineyards?
Well, we recognized the Dundee Hills as being important to anybody's program if you moved in. Look, the next year, Domaine Drouhin, Oregon, Robert Drouhin moved in and bought into the Dundee Hills. And so Dundee Hills was important to us. And Cal was a large grower at the time. And the final thing was Alan Holstein was integral to the Argyle plan. He was one of the, for sure, the one or two best viticulturists in all of the Willamette Valley. And we wanted him working I wanted him working with me. And so the two of us really got off to a great start. And you'll have a great interview with him when he talks about farming for Domaine Druin and farming for Stoller, and then subsequently planting all those vineyards that we planted with Argyle down in the old Amity Hills. So it was a great partnership, really great partnership. And so that's kind of how things rolled. And we really hadn't intended to necessarily make sparkling wine, even though I had been enjoying sparkling wine made by Rich Cushman. And so there was a sparkling Riesling by Fred Arterberry too.
No kidding. Wow.
But Rich Cushman was making sparkling wine at the old Chateau Benoit. And it was a diamond in the rough. You could really tell there was something interesting and vibrant about sparkling wine. And so we felt like if you could inject the right kind of capital into the program, you could make some pretty good sparkling wine. The second part of it, remember, we were still planted with wide spaces. We were still planted without rootstocks, and we didn't have that. We had one clone and a selection of Chardonnay and 3 selections of Pinot Noir to choose from. So it's nothing like the palette we have today with all the newly imported, well, not that newly, 1990 imported French selections. But with sparkling wine, we felt like we could make a consistently high quality wine year in and year out, no matter what nature gives us. In 1984, we were still remembering 1984. It was the coldest dang vintage since 2010 and 2011. And, you get years like that, 91 and 96. And late harvested years, and trying to make still wine off of the existing vineyards could be very problematic if Mother Nature didn't jump in. But we could make sparkling wine, and we could make a sparkling wine that was what I say is ripe fruit without without losing high natural acidity.
Oh, and you're dropping some big names there. Arterberry, right? Come on, you're pulling some stories out I haven't even heard the last 15, 20, 25 years. And before I continue the conversation, the love is rolling in. Love your wine, Rollin. Hello from Connecticut. You got this fan base that's not only national but worldwide, really. And I want to ask you about the time at Argyle. 26 years there, 87 to 2013. You built that into one of the largest wineries in Oregon, and sparkling, right? I mean, you go around Oregon wine country now, and I don't want to say everybody's doing a sparkling, but I remember like 2 or 3 or 4 years ago, I started to hear, hey, we're going to do a sparkling, right? And I thought, and every time I heard that, I thought of you, right? I thought, you're the guy who, put that seed in the ground, 25, 30 years ago, right? So here we are with Argyle, one of the largest tasting rooms in Oregon, beautiful facility in Dundee. But, go back to that time before Argyle, and I want to know what it was about that property and your vision at the time, because, I mean, back in the early 80s, there was nothing there. I mean, it was, right? I mean, talk about that.
About Knudsen Vineyards when there's nothing there?
And Argyle too. I mean, you just, you had this vision for something that didn't exist, right?
Yeah, we made some Chardonnay and we made sparkling wine the first couple of vintages, and no red wine. And tell you what, it was like one hand clapping in the forest, because remember there was a giant recession that hit about 89 or 90 or whatever, and no one was drinking sparkling wine. So it was grim, and we were the only one really out there making a lot of it. So you couldn't sell that. And then we made Chardonnay, and if it didn't taste like, something that was pineapple upside down cake, nobody wanted to buy that either. And but it was pretty brutal, frankly. We didn't start making Pinot until 1992, and mainly the reasoning behind that was that we felt like 92 and afterwards, we had discovered a balance in the vineyard through activities that Alan Holstein had put in operationally into those vineyards. And we felt like we could make a proper, delicious red wine year in and year out. Because remember, that was the rule. When you're a young wine region, it's brutally important that you not have a misstep at all, that you produce the goods year in and year out, no matter what Mother Nature gives you. And one thing that folks out there should realize, the Willamette Valley, there's no two vintages in my mind that have ever really been the same. They're either they can be the driest on record, the wettest on record. I mean, we've had up to 8 inches of rain during harvest. My joke about those is people will ask you, well, Rollin, did you pick before the rain? And I go, dear heart, I picked before the rain, I picked during the rain, I picked after the rain. And, we're not used to a wine region that has that much, variability. 2011 and 10 both were years that we picked, into November. You just don't do that in America. And so it's a wild ride up here. But the whole idea is, despite what Mother Nature gives you, you still want to produce a wine that you can, put your label on and really enjoy it, and have people go like, oh, wow, this is really good wine.
And drink it year after year. Americans
are not used to wine regions where there is vintage variation, and now they can be. It's a gift. The Willamette Valley is a gift to America, in my view, where you can really line up 5 years in a row, and they'll taste very differently, whether it's Chardonnay, sparkling wine, or a red wine Pinot. I'm drinking.
And yet the quality is very good, no matter what the variability gives you.
If you're doing the right thing, it can be. You can stumble. Be careful.
Yep.
And so I'm drinking, for example, ROCO 2012. I grabbed this out of the library.
Good for you. Knudsen, there it is.
Knudsen 2012.
Oh, awesome. And 2012 was a great year.
It was easy. In 2012, I wore a Hawaiian shirt the whole time.
I can just see it. In 1998, you'll remember this, Knudsen Vineyards was one of the first in Oregon to plant Pinot Meunier, because my father felt, well, I always say he felt it was the secret sauce to sparkling wine. And I believe that you and he had kind of a differing point of view on that decision. Do I have that right?
That's a fun story. I think Cal and I probably started discussing Pinot Meunier in 1990. And his deal every year was that Pinot Meunier was the secret that the Champenois had, that they were trying to discourage everybody else in the world to plant, because it was really the secret to Champagne's success. And I tell Cal, I go like, well, let's look at the map. And we look at the map of Champagne, and all the lesser regions going down the Marne towards Paris, which are colder and colder and colder, they're all Pinot Meunier. And I go, Cal, Pinot Meunier is hamburger helper for Champagne.
We call it an extender.
And he would just shrug and walk away, but the next year he brings it up again. The next year he brings it up again. Finally, we had that Muir Turgau sitting up at the top, and I go, okay, fine. Here's Turgau, put your stupid Meunier in. And then
the great partnership between the two.
It was pretty funny. So then what I would do, which was really fun, we made a number of what you call base wines, where you make a still wine out of Pinot Noir that's white, and a still wine out of Chardonnay, of course it's white, that was meant to be bubbled up for Champagne, for sparkling wine. And I would line up all the Chardonnays and all the Pinot Noirs, and I would mix in the Pinot Meunier and just say, here's the Pinots and here's the Chardonnays. And he would go through and taste them, and I'd have him rank them, 1 through, 15 type deal. It was brutal because base wines are really high acid and really low pH, and it grabs your saliva and it's not very pretty. And I kind of like doing that with the Cal anyway, because I'd really get him slobbering. It was pretty funny. And but he would taste through all the Pinots, and I go, Cal, what's number one? And every time number one was what we called block 2, which was entirely Pinot Noir. And right above, and basically the same, soil type, everything was his Meunier. And Meunier in his ranking was always the lowest Pinot. And when we would do the reveal, you could just see him do the shrug. Oh. And we'd do it again the next year and the next year and the next year. But, danged if he didn't, prove himself in 2006. And it was just sheer chance, how sometimes you come up with really good things by making real, stupid decisions and mistakes. And I was pretty sick of Pinot Meunier by 2006. And I never liked the Brut Rosé that we made at Argyle. It was just too Pinot Noir like, and I don't know, it lacked elegance. And believe it or not, I'm kind of, I'm into elegant wine. It's hard to believe, I know, the way that I speak, but I am. So, I go, well, I don't like this Pinot Meunier, so I'm just going to dump it into the Pinot Brut Rosé in a trial. You do a trial on the lab bench to see what might work with what. So I put the Meunier in with the base that I was going to use for my Brut Rosé, and oh my Godfeathers. It was the first time that I brought elegance into our Brut Rosé. It's the first time I smelled rose petals in the wine. And it's just a stunner. And
well, what is the quality that Pinot Meunier adds to sparkling wine? What would you say it is?
Pinot Meunier is a lower acid wine, so it's better to grow in cool places. It's more subtle, and it does have that rose petal. It has spice. It just doesn't have very much fruit to it, or punch of that apple and pear fruit and plum that you can get from Pinot Noir. It's generally can be. It tastes older than it when it's younger. It tastes a little bit older. And I mean, I've had delicious Pinot Meunier wines out of Champagne and et cetera, et cetera. But you've never seen a Champenoise that has a Grand Cru Pinot Noir vineyard or a Grand Cru Chardonnay vineyard tear it out and plant Pinot Meunier. It just
doesn't happen.
No, but it's a beautiful vine. I encourage everybody that goes to Knudsen Vineyards on one of Paige's walks during the especially early summer to walk up to that Pinot Meunier. It'll test your heart, make sure you're healthy, and look at those leaves. They look silver from a distance. They have little hairs all over the leaves, and it's actually a very beautiful vine. And
Meunier is the French word for the flower miller, and it looks as though the vines have been dusted with flour. It's really quite lovely. Really so, Rollin, I have another somewhat personal question. How did my dad influence your life and your career?
Well, Cal was our once he and his cadre of what you would call them bon vivants invested together into a minority shareholding of Argyle. And so Cal became our chairman, and they kind of broke the mold after that generation. It seems like to me, he was very steady, most always positive, and he was somebody that I could pick up the phone in some of our darkest moments, and he'd talk me off the cliff, as it were. And I really appreciated that very much. The old saying of steady hand on the tiller that was Cal Knudsen. And he was, a great supporter of the arts as well.
Mm-hmm.
Can't tell you how many cases of wine we took up to Seattle and spread it all around, and that was really fun. And there was nothing more fun than to go out to vineyards with Cal and walk around Knudsen Vineyards, or show him one of the new places and show him what's going on. And yeah, he was a steady guy, very steady.
He respected you a lot, and he was very glad that you were in relationship, the two of you.
Yeah, he got a hold of a bottle of our 1987 Chardonnay and took it to Kihei, Hawaii,
Mm-hmm.
and shared it with some of his friends, and it just hit him right between the eyes. And I think that's when we really hooked him. It was when he tried that wine, because that was it may have been Oregon's first top 100. I don't know. It's for sure
Wow.
the first top 100 Chardonnay,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
the 87 vintage. And boy, it was my challenge to try to replicate that forever. I don't think I still haven't.
Yeah, that's great.
But he was a fantastic man, and I was lucky, very lucky, to have worked with Cal Knudsen very much. So one exciting time, I managed to get Argyle invited year after year to this really fun thing, and I encourage people to go to at least once, the Wine Spectator show in New York City,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
where some of the best producers from around the world arrive. And so I took Cal with me, and he was my wingman one year. And watching him hippity hop from table to table of all these great Burgundies and great champagnes, and then he would wander over to the first growth Bordeaux's, and he was a kid in the candy shop. It was shop, and he was totally proud that a winery like Argyle was invited to something like that, and that he had very much a role in Argyle's success. So that was really fun.
That's great. That's a great story.
It was fun.
Hey, Paige, what's it like for you to hear these stories?
Oh, it's very heartwarming. We loved our father very much. And you know how when you're a kid, you know your dad as your parent. But to be able to hear these stories of people who dealt with him in a business relationship and a personal relationship, more peer to peer, it's just really filling in a lot of just wonderfulness about my dad. He was a lovely man, as Rollin said.
Well, and Rollin, you left Argyle in 2013. We thought, what are you doing? Right? I mean, what's going on? Like Argyle without what? Whoa, wait a minute.
Well,
but you did it, right? And you co-found ROCO with Corby, and now I remember you first did it. You were like, we're not going to talk about the bubbles. Let's talk about Pinot Noir, right? Because that I know when you founded it, we're going to make amazing bubbles. That's a given, but we want to talk about our Pinot Noir and our Chardonnay and and then obviously RMS with the amazing sparklings that you produce. We knew that was a given, but maybe talk about that. Kind of what was it that sparked you to do that?
Well, I'm really fortunate that Cal was a real mentor to me, and I really tried to study what mentorship really means. And it's kind of a two-way street, where Cal was open to learning things from me and from Alan, and at the same time, he was coaching us at the same time, and that's true mentorship. And so when Cal passed away, who am I going to call on the phone anymore? So it was a tough one, but so I'm really grateful that Argyle continues to engage my interest in I call it a mentorship, where I do get across their winemakers and their viticulture team there. And I really appreciate that, because to work with young people there is really exciting for me. I enjoy the heck out of it. And then I had never started a wine company with my wife, Corby. She'd been in the wine industry for a very long time. She was the second director for International Pinot Noir Celebration. She was early days the director for our Yamhill County Winery Association, which was a very early rendition of the Willamette Valley Winery Association. So she really had been circulating important to the wine industry here in the Willamette Valley for a long time. And so she's my president at ROCO. She's the CO in the co in ROCO. And we started ROCO because our Wits End Vineyard was just so rock solid, delicious in the Chehalem Mountains. And how could you not do it? And we started it I started just doing Pinot Noir because Pinot Noir is the easiest thing I find to make a really good Pinot Noir year in, year out. And then the next hardest is Chardonnay. And then literally for me, the most challenging wine that I make is our sparkling wine. And so I kind of wanted to just take a vacation. So we did Pinot Noir for 5 years. And then my president says, well, I like drinking Chardonnay. And I go, oh, okay. So we started making Chardonnay, and it's been really successful. And then I call it mission creep. 5 years in, later, 5 more years, 10 years in, look at our cellar. It's full of champagne. Why aren't we making any sparkling wine? And so here we are with the RMS Brut. So it's kind of the opposite of the way that Argyle developed. And, but it's funny that it would develop like that. And so we're, that's where we are. Pinot Noir, Chardonnay, and sparkling wine.
Sparkling wine. I've got another question for you, Rollin, regarding Knudsen Vineyards and the scale, the trial and error, all the viticultural innovation that went on there in part under your direction. How would you say Knudsen Vineyards has influenced or impacted the development of the Dundee Hills and the wine industry in Oregon?
I'd say that, especially through Alan Holstein, he'll tell you all the stories. That would be really good. We were both very influenced by Robert Drouin and Bob Drouin, and Cal was too. And so we were always on a replanting episode at Knudsen Vineyards. Knudsen Vineyards was planted, classic California style with 8 feet between the rows and own rooted. And then we moved to 7 feet between the rows and own rooted. And then eventually we moved into this 5 feet between the rows and on rootstocks with all these clones. And one thing that used to happen back in the day, a lot of people didn't want to buy Knudsen fruit because they didn't want to sign a long-term agreement because it was so high in elevation that it didn't have a reputation for getting perfect ripeness every year because it was tough out there, and we were using the wrong viticulture. And Cal recognized that, and he's like, "No, this is the perfect spot. I know it is." And I mean, you can see the view behind Paige there. And he was willing to invest a ton of money into replanting, into irrigation. And today, I'm going to tell you, if you had made picked grapes and made wine at a Knudsen Vineyards in 1985 onward, and then you could pop in today, you would not know you would think you're in a different vineyard, because today Knudsen Vineyards ripens way earlier than it ever has, and in fact, it's consistent as all heck, and its ripening profile. And I think everybody would be, gobsmacked to have a piece of Knudsen Vineyards right now. And it's all due to that reinvestment that Cal spearheaded by listening to Robert Drouin, listening to Brian Crozer, listening to Alan Holstein, and then reacting in a proper fashion, not getting lost in the woods.
Yeah. We said this would be 30 minutes, and you know what? I really don't care. We're going to go maybe all night long.
I'm sorry, everybody.
Yeah.
No.
Pack your bags.
Doing wine and this conversation. So, I'm not going to put the brakes on it. And we did have questions rolling in. What was interesting while you were chatting there, it leads us right into our next question about Alex Denning asked in the chat here, do you see a lot more growth for sparkling wines in Oregon? That led right into our next question about future of the industry. And, I talked about this, how, I'm rolling around Oregon wine country a couple of years ago and everybody's going to make sparkling. So talk about sparkling. And, we've touched on Chardonnay and the growth of Chardonnay, but maybe give us your perspective, Rollin, on the future of Chardonnay from Oregon
Right.
and sparkling.
By the way, we've been here so long, I think I've drunk almost half of this bottle already.
Is that all?
I bet y'all wish y'all had some.
It's pretty darn good.
So it's just opening up deliciously.
Mm-hmm.
So with Chardonnay and with sparkling wine, it's been so difficult to compete with Americans' view of Chardonnay. It's been all California based, which is understandable. It's a unique style. No one has been able to replicate California's, and I'm broad brushing. I apologize to anybody that likes California Chardonnay, because I do. I mean, I enjoy a lot of California Chardonnays, and they are very different from region to region, producer to producer, but in a broad spectrum. Every New World country has tried to make a California style Chardonnay and failed, and that's what Americans have been raised on. And we can't do it here in the Willamette Valley. In Deer Heart, we tried 87, 88, 89, 90. We can't. You can't do it. It's just too cool here and too high in latitude, late ripening, et cetera, et cetera. We make apples and pears and best case scenario, white peach and melon in our sparkling wines. Chardonnays. And so it's tough to compete, but we're chipping away. People, if you can't just be a wine region that makes Pinot Noir alone. And our Chardonnays are an international style of Chardonnay. And what I mean by that is if you grew up in Stockholm, Sweden, and you tasted our Chardonnay, you go, yep, that's Chardonnay, because they grew up on, French Chardonnays.
Mm-hmm.
So we're much more of an international style of Chardonnay than down south. And it's nice to know that in America, we can make two distinctively delicious styles of Chardonnay. I really love drinking Willamette Valley Chardonnays, and I know that folks out there, if you get into them, you'll never go back. They're stunning.
Well, and Rollin, this is not a new refrain for you. You were one of 6 or 7 winemakers that formed the Oregon Chardonnay Alliance way back. And you've been talking about Chardonnay for a long time.
Yeah, we all felt like one hand clapping in the woods. But we're breaking it down now. There's more people making Chardonnay in the Willamette Valley than ever before. People that had sworn that they would never make Chardonnay are making Chardonnay. So there's a real interest there, and you can make some delicious Chardonnays here. Look, the majority of Burgundy is Chardonnay. By far. I want to say it's maybe 65% of Burgundy is Chardonnay. So there's something to that. And then sparkling wine, we really felt like we were one hand clapping in the woods. And the deal about sparkling wine is, one, you've heard me mention before, it's really tough to get it right. There's a tiny little window to pick, and then there's things in the cellar that you can do that would destroy sparkling wine. Sparkling wine shows all your misdeeds in the cellar. And the other part of it is the equipment is A, expensive, and B, difficult to wrap your head around for riddling and for disgorging and for labeling and capsuling and corking and wiring. I mean, there's a lot of impediments. And then the last impediment is that if you really want to make good method champenoise, method traditional sparkling wine, you will grow the grapes, make the wine, and bottle it 4 times before you ever sell a bottle. So that means you're going to have a lot of sparkling wine in the warehouse, which is cash. And you've put a lot of cash into that warehouse before you made your first sale. That was something we realized at Argyle that was like, yikes, in the early days. And so there's many impediments. Now, the reason there's a few people out there, well, a number of people now that are making small amounts of sparkling wine is because my former assistant winemaker, Andrew Davis, Corby and I got him started with his Radiant wine company, which provides custom services. And all through Champagne, it's custom services for tirage and for disgorging and all that kind of stuff. So it's not uncommon, but the Willamette Valley had never seen it before. So we took that risk, and Andrew, I swear, has taken it to another level. The guy is unbelievable. How attention to detail and how successful he's made the company. It's really neat. I applaud having all these other wineries making sparkling wine, and it won't be in my lifetime, but it'll be in our kids or our grandkids' lifetime. People will look back at the Willamette Valley as the top place for making sparkling wine in the New World. And so it's it took a long time to get there, but we're getting there.
50 years.
That's a powerful way to end this. I mean, really, what you just said, I'm trying to absorb that. That's a pretty powerful statement.
Well, today it's pretty exciting. The Willamette Valley is sought out around the world. Just even during the pandemic, ROCO alone has added 4 different countries into our, it's hard to believe. People would reach out and say, hey, we want your wine. I go, well, there's a pandemic going on. I go, well, we don't care, bring it in. And so, people know the Willamette Valley, and they're looking for quality, and they're looking for the places that can produce high quality year in and year out. And many wine producers in the Willamette Valley have proven that to be so. And there's a lot of great energy behind our wine industry right now. It's pretty neat.
Yeah. Well, it's our Q&A session now. And as we approach wherever you may be, 15 minutes until the top of the hour, plenty of time. Might as well extend this. I guess I'll go first, and everybody who's in the chat, if you've got a question for Rollin or Paige, I'm blown away by hearing the stories about your dad, Paige. And we didn't, we haven't heard those stories before. I don't know if you've heard those stories, but what a mentor. We always focus on the farming and the viticulture, and obviously it's wine, of course, so we do that, but there's this business side to it. And Rollin shared a lot of that business side of, when things are going really bad, as they often do in business, and you think it's lights out and I'm going to apply for a job down the road here, right? It had to happen, Rollin. It had to happen a number of times for your career where you're thinking, man, this is it, right?
Yeah, he was like I said, steady hand on the tiller. It's pretty neat. His guys, most of them were Seattle, and one of them's Portland. Really dear guy from Cascade Industries. Wonderful people, and every one of those guys at one time or the other. I remember I made some speech about, I'm never going to make a draw from you guys. We're never going to ask you for more money. It's never going to happen. And they all go, yeah, and start clapping and all that kind of stuff. Here, Ron, have another drink. And then each one of them, one by one, with Cal in the lead, kind of did the old arm wrap and wrapped me around and said, great speech. We're really glad to be, part of Argyle. And that part that you said about never asking for more money, don't worry about it. And they all had stories about Microsoft, for example, and Starbucks.
Starbucks, right.
And all these folks, that asked for more money. And it was pretty funny, but we never did. We never asked for more money. And but it made me feel so much more comfortable about the future of Argyle when all those guys were right up front saying, "Don't you worry about it."
What was it like for you? Question here, with ROCO, did you feel energized? Did you feel like you were back rewinding the clock. I mean, you had all that experience, right? You knew what you knew, but this was you and Corby's deal. Was this like kind of like, starting over again in some respect?
ROCO's been a kick in the pants. I've never, shared an office with my wife before, and we just laugh our butts off almost on a daily basis. In between everything else, and she comes up with these really great, concepts and ideas and things like that stick in my head. And she, if I come up with a new way to ferment red wine, she's like all in on it and go like, why don't you give it a shot? And so you could call it, playing in the sandbox, but in a very serious fashion. Because if you're a child and you're playing in the sandbox is one thing, but if you're a veteran child, when you play in the sandbox, you might come up with something really good. And so that's what we've done at ROCO. And so that's kind of been the gift of ROCO for me. And I gotta say, I'm really proud of our folks here at ROCO, and I'm really proud of the wines that we've made. And it's really kicked up a big notch here. And so it's, instead of Cowles walking through Argyle whistling and jangling his keys, it's me walking through ROCO whistling and jangling my keys now. So it's kind of cool.
That is. Paige, do you have anything to add before we wrap up?
Well, I would say one of the things about my father is that he really had vision, and he had a lot of experience, and he understood how to operate at scale. So he brought this big view to a very nascent industry when things were just beginning. But I liked what you said, Rollin, because I think it was very true that he really liked learning from other people. And he was, he had a day job. He was the head of acquisitions for a big lumber company, big forest products company. And he needed to depend on people like Rollin and Alan and Dick Erath in the early days. But he always checked in. He always wanted to know what was going on. And it was a huge joy for him to be developing this vineyard with you guys. And that clearly has come to us as his children. We're so pleased to be second generation stewards of the vineyard and the legacy.
It was a lot of fun. Very much a lot of fun.
Well, great way to wrap it up. Thank you, Paige. And thank you, Rollin, as well. To be continued, as I always say, right? Until the next conversation when we are back together again. I know, hey, Zoom's been convenient, but I know we're all looking forward to getting back out to Oregon wine country this summer and this fall. And I mean, oh my gosh, every time we talk, I'm like, I can't wait until the next time I get to see the two of you literally face to face. So we miss you at Salud, Brian.
Yes.
We got Salud. You're an integral part of that, and you've been an integral part of bringing the word to folks for a long time about the Willamette Valley. And so we love having you down here, and we look forward to seeing you.
I'm excited to get
very
back.
soon.
Thank you so much for taking time out to join us. We hope everyone here will join us for the third installment of Knudsen Vineyards 50th anniversary series. Next time, Paige and I will be joined by a couple of other Dundee Hills founding family members, Allison and Alex Sokol-Blosser at Sokol-Blosser Winery. I remember first going to those concerts out there at Sokol-Blosser.
That'll be fun.
You know how fun that was, and it turned so many people onto the wine industry in Oregon. So mark your calendars for Tuesday, May 11th, and register at Knudsen Vineyards website, knudsenvineyards.com. I want to thank you so much for sharing your evening with us, wherever you may be, East Coast, West Coast, somewhere in between. Stay safe, stay healthy, and we look forward to seeing you next time here on our show.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Bye.